The Galactic Council's secure communication line flickered to life as Commander Vorthak leaned back in his command chair, sipping the last of his specially brewed Resac tonic. His crimson eyes glowed in the dim light of his private chamber, casting faint shadows across his scaled face. He had been expecting a mission briefing for weeks, but when the Council's insignia appeared on the screen, his stomach churned with a mix of excitement and unease. "Commander Vorthak," a voice spoke from the screen, an authoritative tone layered with caution. "We have a mission of critical importance that requires your specific expertise." Vorthak straightened in his seat, setting the empty tonic cup aside. "I am ready for any task, Counselor. What are the details?" A brief silence followed, as if the voice was choosing its words carefully. "We have reason to believe Earth's Deathworld status may be compromised. We need a thorough investigation." Vorthak's brow furrowed. Earth, the Class 13 Deathworld. Even in Drothak society, it was considered a cursed planet, a place only mentioned in hushed whispers. "Is there an active threat? Earth has been sealed off for decades. No one approaches that place." The voice on the screen sighed. "Therein lies the issue. We've received strange signals, ones we can't identify. It's unlike anything our technology can decipher. Yet, we know it comes from Earth. Our long-range scans have also detected anomalies, massive energy spikes, sporadic and unpredictable. We need answers. We believe your survival team is capable of getting them." Vorthak's mind raced. His crew was the best. They had survived the deadly sandstorms of Velron Prime and the liquid methane oceans of Kados Roman 9. Yet Earth, it was a planet that had driven even the most advanced species to madness. The last team that attempted to explore Earth never returned. "We accept the mission," Vorthak finally said, his voice betraying none of his trepidation. "When do we leave?" "Immediately," the counselor responded. "Your ship will be stocked with all necessary supplies. You have clearance to bypass the quarantine protocol. Remember, Commander, this mission is covert. No one can know why we are investigating Earth. You are to report only to the Council." The transmission ended as quickly as it began, leaving Vorthak in a lingering silence. He tapped the console on his wrist, summoning the rest of his crew. Within minutes, they gathered in the command center. Valric, his second in command, a burly Drothak warrior with dark green scales, crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. Kren and Urok, the team's engineers, exchanged glances, their faces unreadable beneath their helmets. The others filed in, standing at attention. "We're heading to Earth," Vorthak began, watching their expressions carefully. "Earth?" Valric snorted, his eyes narrowing. "The Deathworld? What in the name of the Void are we supposed to do there?" Vorthak sighed. "The Council believes there's something more to the planet. Unexplained energy signals. They want answers." Kren, the younger of the two engineers, raised his hand cautiously. "Sir, I've heard stories that humans, the ones who lived on Earth, were more dangerous than the planet itself. But that's just myth, right?" Vorthak locked eyes with him. "That's what we're going to find out." Their ship, the Resolute, streaked through the blackness of space, its stealth systems engaged as they approached Earth's orbit. The planet loomed ahead, a blue-green sphere surrounded by a field of debris from ancient satellites and wrecked vessels. Earth's surface, from what little they could see, looked serene, clouds drifting lazily over land masses and oceans glistening under the sun. But the crew knew better. This was a world that had earned its deadly reputation. "Approaching coordinates," Urok said, his voice tense as he monitored the ship's systems. "Atmospheric entry in 3 minutes." Vorthak watched the planet grow larger in the viewport. "What's the status on those energy readings?" Kren tapped his console rapidly. "Still there, Commander. The spikes are erratic, but there's no pattern. It's almost as if they're reacting to something, but I can't say what." "Focus on getting us down in one piece," Valric grunted. "We'll deal with the rest later." As the Resolute pierced Earth's atmosphere, the ship began to shake, turbulence rattling the hull. Alarms blared for a moment before Urok stabilized their descent. They plummeted through thick layers of cloud until the sprawling landscape of Earth stretched out beneath them, forests, rivers, mountains, all untouched by civilization for centuries. "Landing zone secured," Urok announced. "We're heading for a clearing near one of the energy spikes." As they approached the ground, the crew caught their first glimpse of Earth's wildlife. Towering trees with twisted branches reached toward the sky like skeletal fingers. Strange, predatory creatures moved in the shadows, their eyes glowing faintly in the underbrush. Even from the safety of the ship, Vorthak felt an unsettling presence, as if the planet itself was watching them. The ship touched down with a soft thud, the engines powering down. The crew suited up quickly, their protective armor glinting in the pale light that filtered through the dense foliage. Vorthak activated his helmet scanner, sweeping the area for any signs of danger. "Stay sharp," he ordered. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." Valric and Kren followed closely behind him, their weapons drawn. The ground beneath their boots was soft, damp with morning dew, and the air was thick with the smell of vegetation and something else, something metallic. Kren's eyes widened as his scanner beeped. "Commander, you're not going to believe this." Vorthak turned to him. "What is it?" "These readings, they're human," Kren said, his voice barely a whisper. "Or at least, they're coming from human technology." Before Vorthak could respond, a sudden, ear-splitting roar echoed through the trees. The ground trembled, and the team instinctively raised their weapons, forming a defensive circle. "What the hell was that?" Valric growled, his eyes scanning the tree line. Vorthak didn't answer. His focus was on the direction of the roar. In the distance, something was moving fast. A shadow darted between the trees, barely visible, but massive. "Move!" Vorthak barked. "Fall back to the ship." The team scrambled, sprinting through the thick forest as the ground shook beneath them. Whatever was chasing them was getting closer. They reached the edge of the clearing just as a massive figure burst through the trees. Vorthak stopped in his tracks, eyes wide in disbelief. Standing before them was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen, a hulking, humanoid figure covered in ragged armor, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It wasn't the creature that terrified him, though. It was the emblem on its chest, the mark of the Rashurian elite, a species believed to have perished centuries ago in their failed invasion of Earth. "They're alive?" Valric gasped. The creature let out another deafening roar and charged. Vorthak's instincts kicked in as the towering figure barreled toward them. "Open fire!" he yelled, raising his plasma rifle. His team reacted instantly, unleashing a barrage of energy rounds at the charging creature. The air crackled with the sound of weapons fire, but to their horror, the beast barely slowed. Its armor seemed to absorb most of the damage, and the few shots that made it through only seemed to enrage it further. "We need to fall back," Valric shouted, his weapon overheating as he continued to fire at the oncoming threat. But it was too late. The creature reached them in mere seconds, its massive arms swinging down toward Vorthak with crushing force. He barely had time to roll out of the way, the ground splintering where he had stood a moment before. The impact sent a shockwave through the clearing, toppling several trees like matchsticks. Kren and Urok scrambled to flank the beast, aiming for its exposed joints. But the creature moved with surprising speed, dodging their attacks and countering with brutal precision. One swipe of its massive hand sent Kren flying into a nearby tree with a sickening thud. He slumped to the ground, unconscious. "Urok, get Kren back to the ship," Vorthak ordered, dodging another strike. "Valric and I will hold it off." Urok hesitated for a split second before nodding and sprinting toward Kren, dragging the engineer's limp body through the underbrush. Valric, meanwhile, had managed to land a direct hit on the creature's knee, causing it to stagger. It let out an enraged howl, turning its full attention on him. "Now would be a great time for one of those brilliant plans of yours, Commander," Valric called out, his voice strained as he tried to avoid the creature's relentless attacks. Vorthak scanned the area quickly, looking for anything they could use to their advantage. His eyes fell on a cluster of large boulders at the edge of the clearing. "Valric, get behind those rocks. Draw it in." Valric nodded, sprinting toward the boulders. The creature, enraged by the shot to its knee, charged after him without hesitation. As soon as Valric ducked behind the rocks, Vorthak aimed his rifle at the largest boulder and fired a concentrated plasma blast. The rock shattered, sending a cascade of debris tumbling down onto the creature. For a moment, there was silence. The massive figure lay buried beneath the rubble, motionless. Valric peeked out from behind the remaining rocks, breathing heavily. "Is it dead?" Vorthak didn't lower his weapon. "Don't count on it." As if on cue, the pile of debris began to shift. A guttural growl echoed from beneath the rocks, and slowly the creature began to rise, pushing aside the boulders with terrifying strength. "By the void," Valric muttered, backing up. "We don't have time for this," Vorthak growled, turning toward the ship. "Fall back. We'll deal with it later." The two of them sprinted toward the Resolute, the creature still struggling to free itself from the rubble. They reached the ship just as Yurok was loading Kren onto the medical stretcher inside. "We need to leave, now," Vorthak barked as he ran up the ramp. Yurok nodded, closing the ship's hatch and rushing to the controls. The engines roared to life, and within moments, the ship was airborne, lifting off from the clearing as the creature let out another enraged howl below. Vorthak sank into his command chair, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. "Status report." "Kren's alive, but barely," Yurok said, glancing back at the medical console. "He took a hard hit. I've stabilized him for now, but we need to get him proper medical attention soon." "And the creature?" Vorthak asked, pulling up the ship's external scanners. "Still down there," Yurok replied. "It's wounded, but it's not dead." Vorthak stared at the screen, watching the beast's glowing eyes flicker in the shadows of the forest below. "We need to figure out what it is. That armor, it's Rishurian." Valric frowned, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. "The Rishurians were wiped out centuries ago. No one survived the Earth campaigns." "Clearly, that's not true," Vorthak muttered. "And if the Rishurians are still here, we need to find out why." Yurok glanced over his shoulder, his expression grim. "You're not suggesting we go back down there, are you?" "We don't have a choice," Vorthak said. "The Council sent us here to investigate those energy signals, and now we know they're connected to Rishurian tech. If they found a way to survive on this planet, we need to know how. And more importantly, we need to know if they're a threat to the galaxy." Valric grunted. "They've always been a threat. We just thought they were extinct." Vorthak turned his attention back to the scanner, his mind racing. There had to be more to this. The Rishurians had been one of the most feared species in the galaxy, their military might unmatched until their ill-fated invasion of Earth. The planet had destroyed them at least, that was what everyone had believed. But if even a small faction had survived, hidden on Earth all this time, it could change everything. He activated the ship's long-range sensors, searching for any other signs of Rishurian activity. Almost immediately, his console beeped, indicating another energy spike, this one larger and more concentrated than the previous readings. "There," Vorthak said, pointing to the screen. "That's our target. We're going to find out exactly what the Rishurians are up to." The ship flew low over the dense forest, following the energy signal to its source. As they approached, Vorthak noticed something strange. The trees below seemed to thin out, giving way to a wide, barren expanse, and in the center of that expanse was a massive structure, half buried in the earth. "That's not natural," Yurok said, his voice filled with awe as he stared at the structure on the screen. "It's too uniform. It looks like a fortress." Vorthak nodded, his eyes narrowing. "Rishurian architecture. They must have built it after the war." Valric scowled. "How did no one know about this? Earth's been quarantined for centuries." "Maybe that's why," Vorthak replied. "The Council knew something was down here. They just didn't tell anyone." Urok brought the ship in for a landing on the outskirts of the fortress. The structure loomed above them, its dark, angular walls covered in vines and overgrown foliage. Despite its age, it still radiated a sense of power and danger. "Stay alert," Vorthak ordered as they disembarked from the ship. "We don't know what we're walking into." The team moved cautiously toward the fortress, their weapons at the ready. The entrance was a massive, metal door that had been partially caved in, leaving just enough space for them to squeeze through. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. The walls were lined with strange, glowing symbols, Rishurian runes, marking this place as a military outpost. The deeper they went, the more ominous the atmosphere became. It was as if the fortress itself was alive, watching their every move. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the halls, low and guttural. "Intruders." Vorthak froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The voice wasn't Rishurian, it was human. Vorthak's grip tightened on his rifle. His heart raced as he signaled for the others to stop. The eerie, disembodied voice still echoed in the halls of the ancient Rishurian fortress, sending a chill through his spine. "Human?" Valric muttered under his breath. "Impossible. No human could survive out here, not after all this time." But Vorthak wasn't so sure. "We've seen stranger things on this planet," he whispered, motioning for the group to take cover behind a series of rusted pillars. The hallway was wide and dilapidated, the walls etched with Rishurian symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. Dust hung in the air, and every step felt like they were walking deeper into the jaws of something ancient, something dangerous. The voice echoed again, this time clearer. "I know why you're here," it said, slow and deliberate, as if savoring the words. "You seek the truth about Earth's quarantine, don't you?" Valric's eyes darted nervously, scanning the ceiling as if expecting something to drop down on them. Urok had gone deathly quiet, gripping his rifle with white-knuckled intensity. Vorthak motioned for them to stay hidden as he activated his communicator. "This is Commander Vorthak of the Galactic Recon Division. Identify yourself." There was a long silence. The air around them seemed to grow colder, as if the voice were considering its response. "You already know who I am, Commander." Before Vorthak could respond, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Down the hall, just at the edge of the light, something moved fast and silent. He raised his weapon, signaling for the others to do the same. "Movement, 12 o'clock, Valric hissed, taking aim. The shape stopped just outside the range of their lights. It was humanoid, but larger, its features obscured by shadows. Vorthak took a deep breath, stepping forward cautiously. "Whoever you are, show yourself. We don't mean harm." Another silence followed. Then, slowly, the figure stepped into the dim light. It was a human, a male, tall and muscular, his skin weathered and scarred. He wore what remained of an old Earth military uniform, tattered and frayed from decades of use. His eyes gleamed with a cold intelligence, but what sent a shiver through Vorthak's bones was the expression on his face, a smile, but not one of friendliness. This was the smile of a predator. "You?" Valric gasped, lowering his weapon slightly in shock. "But humans haven't been on Earth for centuries." The man, if he could still be called that, stared at them, his smile widening. "You really don't know, do you?" His voice was gravelly, as though unused for a long time. "The truth of why this planet was sealed off. The Class 13 designation. They sent you here blind." "We're here to investigate energy readings," Vorthak said carefully, keeping his distance. "And now we find a human survivor. That's all the Council needs to know." The man chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "You think this is about energy readings? You poor, deluded creatures." His eyes darkened. "The quarantine wasn't for your protection, it was for ours." "What are you talking about?" Urok asked, breaking his silence. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled. The man stepped closer, slowly lowering himself onto a piece of rubble as if it were a throne. "Earth was never just a death world. It was a crucible. You see, the Rishurians came here to conquer, just like every other species that thought they could claim this planet's riches. But Earth wasn't just hostile, it changed them. Change them how? Valric asked, his voice tight. Earth's atmosphere, its gravity, the constant threat of extinction, it didn't just kill, it reshaped life. The Rishurians came here as conquerors and left as something else, something unstoppable. His smile faded, replaced by a grim seriousness. Those creatures you fought outside, the one you barely survived against, they were Rishurian soldiers once. But now, there's something far worse. They're Earthborn. The word sent a ripple of unease through the team. What do you mean, Earthborn? Vorthak demanded, stepping forward. What did this planet do to them? The man's eyes flicked to Vorthak, a shadow of something like pity crossing his face. The truth is, Earth doesn't just kill the weak. It rebuilds the strong. It molds you, adapts you, makes you fit to survive in its most dangerous corners. And for the Rishurians, that meant becoming more than just soldiers. They became predators adapted to this planet's every threat. Vorthak's mind raced. The Rishurian Empire had been one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy before their sudden disappearance. Everyone had assumed they had been wiped out in the Earth campaign. But this, if what the man was saying was true, then the Rishurians hadn't just survived. They had evolved, transformed by Earth's brutal environment into something even more dangerous. How many of them are there? Vorthak asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The man tilted his head, his smile returning. Enough. And they're not alone. Earth's quarantine wasn't just for the Rishurians. It was for all the species that came here. The ones that thought they could bend this planet to their will. Every race that's ever set foot on this soil has been changed. Humans, Rishurians, even the flora and fauna, it's all connected. Earth is a crucible, and it forges its inhabitants into something else. A cold chill swept through Vorthak's body. He had known Earth was dangerous, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. The quarantine hadn't been about keeping the galaxy safe from Earth's predators, it was about keeping the galaxy safe from Earth itself. Why didn't the Council tell anyone? Urok asked, his voice barely a whisper. The man's eyes glinted with something almost like amusement. You think the Council didn't know? They knew. They've always known. But they couldn't risk the galaxy finding out the truth. So they quarantined Earth, declared it a Class 13 Deathworld, and hoped no one would be foolish enough to come here again. But we came, Valric said quietly. We've walked into a nightmare. The man's smile widened. Welcome to Earth. Vorthak's mind raced. He had to get this information back to the Council, had to warn them about what was happening here. But if the Council already knew, then who could he trust? Could this man even be telling the truth? Why are you telling us this? Vorthak asked, narrowing his eyes. What do you want? The man stood slowly, his gaze locking onto Vorthak's. What I want? He stepped closer, and Vorthak could feel the weight of the man's presence bearing down on him. I want you to leave. I want you to go back to your ships, fly off this planet, and never return. Earth isn't for the likes of you. You don't belong here, and if you stay, you'll die. Silence fell over the group as the man's words sank in. Vorthak glanced at his team. Urok looked pale, Valric was frowning, his hands tight on his rifle. None of them seemed eager to argue. But Vorthak wasn't ready to back down. Not yet. We came here for answers, he said firmly, and we're not leaving until we get them. The man's smile faded, and for a moment, Vorthak thought he saw a flicker of sadness in his eyes. Then you've sealed your fate. Before Vorthak could react, the man turned and walked into the shadows, disappearing into the labyrinth of the fortress. For a moment, no one moved. We should leave, Urok said quietly, his voice trembling. He's right. This place, we're not meant to be here. Vorthak took a deep breath, his mind swirling with doubt and fear. But something inside him refused to turn back. The truth was here, buried in the ruins of this fortress, and he had to find it. We're going deeper, he said, his voice cold and determined. Valric hesitated but nodded. Whatever you said, Commander. Urok swallowed hard, following in silence as they ventured deeper into the heart of Earth's secrets. The deeper they ventured into the fortress, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls, once ancient and forgotten, now seemed to pulse with a strange energy. The Rashurian symbols glowed brighter, casting eerie shadows across the path. Every step felt like it was being monitored, as if the very ground beneath them was alive and waiting to strike. "Something's off," Valric muttered, his voice hushed as he scanned their surroundings. "It's like the air itself is watching us." Urok, tense and pale, stayed close behind. His grip on his weapon had tightened to the point of pain. "We shouldn't have come this far. That, human." He was a warning. Vorthak ignored them, his mind laser-focused. The human survivor's words still rang in his ears. Earth is a crucible. It reshapes life. If that was true, then they were walking deeper into the belly of a planet that didn't just kill, it changed. But how? How did a planet do that? The question gnawed at him, pushing him forward. His communicator buzzed softly in his ear, and he flicked it on. "Recon 9 to command," he whispered. "We've made contact with a survivor. Human, possibly from the Earth campaigns. He claims the planet isn't just hostile, it alters the species that live here. Request immediate data analysis and backup." Static. Vorthak frowned, tapping the communicator again. "Recon 9 to command, do you copy?" More static. "Atmospheric interference," Valric said, glancing at him. "Maybe the energy readings we've been tracking are stronger the deeper we go. Could be blocking communications." Vorthak's jaw clenched. Of course. They were isolated now, cut off from any outside help. That didn't change the mission, but it made everything feel more dangerous, more immediate. The corridor ahead opened into a vast chamber, larger than anything they had encountered so far. The walls stretched high into the darkness, and at its center stood a massive, pulsating structure, glowing faintly with a deep, ominous light. It looked like a mix between a biological organism and a machine, a twisted fusion of metal and flesh that defied all logic. "What in the galaxy is that?" Urok whispered, his eyes wide with horror. Valric stepped forward cautiously. "It looks alive." Vorthak felt a cold sweat break out across his skin. The structure hummed softly, its pulse synchronized with something deep beneath the surface. He could feel it in his bones, as though the planet itself was beating in rhythm with the monstrosity before them. "This is it," Vorthak murmured. "This is why Earth is a Class 13 Deathworld. This thing." He approached it slowly, his senses on high alert. The closer he got, the more he realized that the structure was emitting waves of energy, subtle but powerful. His scanner flickered erratically, overwhelmed by the data it was receiving. "It's some kind of energy generator, but not like anything we've seen before. It's biological." As he reached out to touch the structure, the chamber suddenly shook, and the walls seemed to ripple. The ground beneath them trembled violently, and a deafening roar echoed from the depths of the earth. "Commander," Urok shouted, stepping back in fear. "Something's coming." The floor cracked open, and from the fissure erupted a mass of writhing, serpentine creatures, twisted amalgamations of flesh and metal, their bodies pulsing with the same eerie light as the structure. Their mouths opened wide, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth, and they lunged forward with terrifying speed. "Open fire!" Vorthak yelled, raising his rifle. The team unleashed a barrage of plasma rounds. The bright bursts of light lit the chamber. The creatures shrieked as they were hit, their bodies twitching and contorting, but they didn't stop. They seemed to absorb the damage, growing more frenzied with every shot. "There's too many of them," Valric yelled, backing toward the entrance. "We can't hold them off." Vorthak's mind raced. They couldn't retreat now, not without understanding what they were facing. But the creatures were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. "Fall back," he ordered, firing at the nearest one. "We regroup outside." The team moved as one, retreating toward the hallway they had entered from, but the creatures were faster. One leaped toward Valric, its metal jaws snapping shut inches from his face. He fired point blank into its mouth, the plasma shot exploding its head in a shower of sparks and gore. "They're everywhere," Urok cried, slashing at another creature that had wrapped itself around his leg. Vorthak could feel the ground shaking again, the fissures widening as more of the creatures emerged. They had to get out of the chamber before they were overwhelmed. Suddenly, the pulsating structure let out a high-pitched, keening sound, and the creatures froze mid-attack, their bodies trembling. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, without warning, the creatures retreated, slithering back into the cracks from which they came. The chamber fell deathly quiet. The team stood there, panting, weapons still raised, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "What just happened?" Urok asked, his voice shaking. Vorthak's gaze locked onto the pulsating structure. It was still humming, but something had changed. The energy it was emitting had intensified, its glow growing darker, more malevolent. "It called them off," Valric said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The structure, it controls them." Vorthak nodded, his mind racing. "This is the key. Whatever this thing is, it's responsible for Earth's transformation. It's what's been warping the planet and everything on it." "But what is it?" Urok asked, staring at the alien machine with a mix of awe and terror. Vorthak shook his head. "I don't know, but we need to find out." Before they could discuss further, a new voice echoed through the chamber, calm and composed. "You won't find your answers here." Vorthak's eyes snapped to the entrance. The human from before had returned, standing at the edge of the chamber with an unreadable expression. "You again," Vorthak said, his grip tightening on his weapon. "What do you want?" The man stepped forward, his face light by the glow of the structure. "I told you to leave, but since you're so determined, I'll give you one last piece of advice." He glanced at the structure behind them, his expression hardening. "That thing you're so curious about? It's not Earth's creation, it's Rishurian." Vorthak blinked in surprise. "Rishurian? But—" "They didn't just come here to conquer," the man interrupted. "They came here to experiment. Earth's environment was perfect for their twisted science. That thing you're looking at it was designed to accelerate evolution, to force creatures to adapt to the planet's dangers. But they couldn't control it. It turned against them, just like it will turn against you." The realization hit Vorthak like a shockwave. The Rishurians had created a weapon, one that had spiraled out of control, reshaping everything on Earth, including themselves. "Why are you telling us this?" Vorthak asked, his voice low. The man's eyes darkened. "Because if you don't leave, you'll suffer the same fate as the Rishurians, and if you take this knowledge back to the galaxy, the same thing will happen to them." Vorthak took a step back, his mind reeling. This was bigger than anything he could have imagined. The entire galaxy was at risk if this technology was unleashed. He turned to his team, his decision made. "We're leaving. Now." Valric and Urok exchanged nervous glances, but didn't argue. They turned and began making their way out of the chamber, but Vorthak paused, glancing back at the human. "What about you?" he asked. "What are you going to do?" The man's expression was unreadable. "I'll do what I've always done, survive." With that, Vorthak turned and followed his team out of the chamber, his mind heavy with the weight of what they had discovered. Earth wasn't just a death world. It was a crucible, and the truth of its Class 13 status was something far more dangerous than anyone had ever realized. The tension was palpable as Vorthak's team made their way back through the winding halls of the ancient fortress, each step heavier than the last. The Rishurian symbols continued to glow faintly on the walls, but now they felt more ominous, as if they were mocking the intruders for daring to seek answers in this forsaken place. Vorthak's mind raced with the implications of what the human survivor had revealed. The Rishurians hadn't just been here to conquer Earth, they had experimented on it, tampering with the very essence of life on the planet. The alien structure they'd found was a Rishurian creation, designed to manipulate evolution, forcing creatures to adapt to Earth's dangers at an accelerated rate. But it had backfired. The Rishurians couldn't control what they had unleashed, and now the entire planet was a ticking time bomb of biological experimentation gone horribly wrong. "Commander," Valric whispered, snapping Vorthak out of his thoughts. "We need to move faster. If that human was telling the truth, we're in more danger than we thought." Vorthak nodded, but his mind was still fixated on the larger picture. If this technology, this evolutionary accelerator, fell into the wrong hands or worse, if the information got out, entire civilizations could be at risk. The same chaos that had consumed Earth could ripple out across the galaxy. "We have to make sure no one finds this," Vorthak muttered, more to himself than to his team. Urok's eyes darted nervously. "What do you mean, Commander?" Vorthak didn't answer immediately. He wasn't even sure what he meant. But one thing was clear: they couldn't let this information escape Earth. If the Galactic Council got wind of what the Rishurians had created here, every power-hungry faction in the galaxy would come for it. And they wouldn't be able to control it, just like the Rishurians couldn't. As they approached the exit of the fortress, the air seemed to grow heavier, thick with tension, and something far more primal. The structure's energy was fading, but the lingering presence of the creatures they had encountered earlier kept them on edge. Each crack in the ground, each flicker of light, felt like a precursor to another attack. "Almost there," Valric said, relief creeping into his voice as the light of the surface began to filter into the tunnel. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from behind them, followed by the rumble of collapsing stone. Urok spun around, weapon raised. "Commander!" From the shadows of the corridor, a new wave of the serpentine creatures emerged, slithering with terrifying speed. But these were different from the ones they had fought earlier. Their bodies glowed brighter, and their movements were faster, more deliberate, as if they had been empowered by something deep within the fortress. "Move!" Vorthak shouted. "We're almost out." The team sprinted toward the exit, but the creatures were gaining on them. One of them lunged at Valric, its metallic jaws snapping just inches from his back. He fired a plasma round, but the creature dodged with unnatural agility, its body twisting through the air like liquid. Urok was the next target. A creature wrapped itself around his leg, its sharp appendages digging into his armor. He screamed, firing desperately at its head, but it held fast, dragging him down. "Commander!" Urok cried out in panic as he struggled against the creature's grip. "It's got me." Vorthak spun around, firing a precise shot that hit the creature squarely in its head. It screeched and recoiled, releasing Urok, who scrambled to his feet and limped toward the exit. "Go! Get out of here!" Vorthak yelled, standing his ground as the rest of the team made their way into the light. The creatures hissed, their eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. It was as if they had learned from their previous encounters. They no longer attacked blindly, but with strategy and coordination. Vorthak fired again, hitting two of them, but he knew he couldn't hold them off forever. The fortress was collapsing, the walls trembling as the ground beneath them shifted. The energy from the structure had destabilized the entire area. As he backed toward the exit, he felt the ground give way beneath him. With a shout, Vorthak fell into the darkness, the world spinning as rubble crashed down around him. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, from the void, he heard a voice. "Vorthak." He opened his eyes, dazed and disoriented. He was in a cavern, dimly lit by the same eerie glow that permeated the fortress. Above him, the creatures hissed, but they didn't attack. They watched him, as if waiting for something. "Vorthak," the voice said again. It was cold, mechanical, and unmistakably Rishurian. He turned his head and saw it. A figure tall, regal, and terrifying stood at the edge of the cavern. Its body was a grotesque fusion of organic and mechanical components, its face a mask of artificial intelligence with eyes that burned with ancient knowledge. "Who are you?" Vorthak demanded, struggling to stand. "I am what remains of the Rishurian Overmind," the figure replied, its voice echoing through the chamber. "I am the architect of Earth's transformation." Vorthak's heart raced. The Overmind? The Rishurian hive intelligence that had guided their empire? He had thought it was long destroyed. You You created this? Vorthak asked, gesturing to the creatures around him. I did, the Overmind said. I designed Earth to be the ultimate crucible, a planet that could shape life into something beyond its limitations. But my creations exceeded my expectations. Vorthak's blood ran cold. You mean these creatures? No, the Overmind said softly. Humans. Vorthak's eyes widened. Humans? But they're weak. Fragile. The Overmind laughed, a sound that sent chills down Vorthak's spine. That's what we thought, too, until we realized they were the only species that could thrive in the environment we had created. They adapted, evolved, faster than anything we had ever seen. Vorthak couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're saying humans were engineered? Inadvertently, the Overmind replied. The planet shaped them, just as it shaped everything else. They became stronger, smarter, more resilient, and now they are the greatest threat to the galaxy. Vorthak's mind reeled. This changed everything. The Galactic Council had always considered humans a minor species, dangerous only because of the Deathworld they inhabited. But if what the Overmind was saying was true, they are the reason Earth is a Class 13 Deathworld, the Overmind said. Not because of the planet's dangers, but because of what the planet has made them. Vorthak stood frozen, the weight of the Overmind's revelation crushing him. Humans, the species his entire life had been conditioned to fear, pity, and dismiss, were the culmination of an experiment that even their creators couldn't foresee. The fortress, the creatures, the twisted evolutionary accelerator, all of it had been a means to an end that resulted in humanity's unpredictable and terrifying potential. Why are you telling me this? Vorthak finally asked, his voice shaky but firm. The Overmind's glowing eyes bore into him, a gaze filled with eons of calculation. Because you are here to make a choice, Vorthak. The galaxy will soon learn of this truth, and they will respond. But how they respond depends on you and what you choose to do with the knowledge I have given you. Vorthak shook his head, still grappling with the enormity of the situation. What choice? What can I possibly do against an entire galaxy? The Overmind raised one of its twisted, metallic appendages. You are not alone, Commander. The humans do not yet know the full extent of their own power, but they are beginning to realize. You have seen what their planet has done to them, how they have adapted. Vorthak thought back to the human survivor, to the unyielding defiance in his eyes, even when confronted with his own death. That survivor had spoken of Earth's hardships not as a curse, but as a crucible that forged their strength. It was that unspoken understanding of their own nature that had made them dangerous, and now, if the rest of the galaxy discovered that humanity's power came not from their technology or numbers, but from the very essence of their evolution, they will come for Earth, Vorthak said quietly. Once the truth is out, the galaxy will try to destroy them. The Overmind tilted its head. They will, and they will fail. You see, Vorthak, that is the irony of the galaxy's fear. The more they try to crush humanity, the stronger they will become, and Earth will continue to shape them. Unless, Vorthak trailed off, feeling the cold grip of realization creeping up his spine. Unless you stop them, the Overmind finished. You, and those who have the wisdom to see beyond fear. Vorthak clenched his fists. He had spent his life in service to the Galactic Council, a loyal soldier who had believed in their mission to protect the galaxy from the dangers of the unknown. But now, everything he thought he knew had been shattered. And if I refuse? He asked. The Overmind's eyes flickered. Then the galaxy will burn. You cannot stop the truth from spreading, Vorthak. You can only choose how you respond to it. A deep rumble echoed through the cavern, snapping Vorthak out of his thoughts. The ground beneath him trembled, and cracks spidered across the walls as the ancient fortress began to collapse. The structure is failing, the Overmind said calmly. Our time is short. Vorthak's mind raced. He could see Valric and Urok calling to him from the distant mouth of the cavern, their faces filled with concern. They were waiting for him to return, to lead them out of this forsaken place. But how could he return with this burden? How could he face them knowing that the very foundations of their understanding were about to be upended? In the distance, the hiss of the serpentine creatures grew louder. They were approaching again, their movements faster and more aggressive. Vorthak knew he didn't have long. "Commander," Urok's voice echoed down the tunnel, sharp with urgency. "We need to move." Vorthak looked back at the Overmind, its form looming over him like a specter of the past, its glowing eyes burning with knowledge and indifference. "Why are you still here?" Vorthak asked, his voice laced with frustration. "If you're so powerful, why haven't you left this planet?" The Overmind's expression, if it could even be called that, remained unchanged. "I am bound to Earth. My existence is tied to the very process I set in motion millennia ago. But my purpose is complete. What remains is the future one that you, Vorthak, must shape." Vorthak stared at the Overmind for a long moment, the weight of its words hanging in the air like a suffocating cloud. He had come to Earth expecting to face the dangers of a hostile Deathworld, but now he was faced with a choice that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The fortress continued to crumble around him, debris falling from the ceiling as the energy field that had sustained it began to falter. The serpentine creatures were closer now, their hissing a steady, ominous rhythm. "I will not force you to decide now," the Overmind said. "But know this: whatever path you choose, the truth will follow." With that, the Overmind's form began to flicker and fade, its presence slowly dissolving into the air like mist. Vorthak stood there for a moment longer, his heart pounding in his chest, before turning and running toward the exit. The serpentine creatures surged forward, their glowing bodies weaving through the shadows like predators stalking their prey. Vorthak fired at them as he ran, his plasma shots grazing one of the creatures but barely slowing them down. "Get ready," Vorthak shouted to his team as he sprinted toward the surface. "We're not out of this yet." Valric and Urok immediately took up defensive positions, their weapons trained on the tunnel as the first of the creatures burst into the light. Plasma rounds flew, hitting the creatures head-on, but they were relentless, their bodies writhing as they pushed through the onslaught. "We need to move," Valric yelled, his voice strained as he fired round after round. "There's too many of them." Vorthak could see the edge of the cliff where their ship was waiting, just a few meters away. But the creatures were closing in, their numbers overwhelming. "Urok, get the ship ready for takeoff," Vorthak ordered, his voice sharp. Urok sprinted toward the ship, his hands moving quickly over the control panel as the engines roared to life. The ship's thrusters kicked up a cloud of dust and debris, and the door slid open with a loud hiss. "Go!" Vorthak shouted, pushing Valric toward the ship as the creatures lunged forward in a final desperate attack. Valric barely made it inside, firing one last shot before the ship door slammed shut. Vorthak leaped in after him, slamming his hand against the control panel to lift off. The ship rocketed into the sky, leaving the collapsing fortress and the serpentine creatures far below. As they broke through the atmosphere, Vorthak slumped against the wall, his breath ragged. For now, they were safe, but the Overmind's words echoed in his mind. The truth would follow. The ship's ascent into orbit was a welcome reprieve, but the silence that filled the cabin was heavier than the gravity they had just escaped. Vorthak stood by the cockpit window, watching the planet's surface grow smaller and smaller, but his mind was elsewhere deep within the fortress, still standing in front of the Overmind. He could feel Valric's and Urok's eyes on him, waiting for answers. But what could he say? How could he explain the knowledge that now weighed on him, the secret that Earth had hidden from the galaxy for so long? Valric was the first to break the silence. "What the hell happened down there, Vorthak? We heard something over the comms, but we didn't catch everything." Vorthak's fists tightened at his sides. How much should he tell them? Could he trust them with the full truth? He had known both men for years, trusted them with his life more times than he could count. But this was different. He turned to face them, his expression grim. "We were wrong about Earth. Everything we've been told. It's all a lie." Urok frowned, his brow furrowing. "What are you talking about?" The creatures, the fortress, the overmind, it's all connected, Vorthak said, pacing now as he tried to find the right words. Earth isn't just a death world because of its environment. It's a death world because of what it does to the beings that live on it. It pushes them, forces them to evolve in ways we can't even imagine. That's why the humans are so different. Different, Valric echoed, still trying to grasp the implications. Vorthak stopped pacing, his gaze locking onto Valric's. They're stronger than we thought. Not just physically, but mentally. They adapt to things that should have broken them long ago. And the worst part? They don't even fully understand it yet. The planet has been shaping them for millennia, turning them into something more. Urok sat down, his face pale. You're saying Earth itself made them like this? But why? Why would a planet do that? Vorthak sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know. But the Overmind hinted that it was deliberate. Some kind of experiment, set in motion ages ago. The humans were meant to be this way, and now that the truth is out, the galaxy won't sit idly by. Valric's eyes widened in realization. The Council, they'll want to wipe them out, won't they? They can't allow something like that to exist. A species that can outgrow even their own creators. They'll see it as a threat. Vorthak nodded grimly. They will. But the humans won't go down easily. If we try to crush them, we'll only make them stronger. It's a paradox. The more we fear them, the more dangerous they become. Urok leaned forward, his hands clasped together. So what do we do, Commander? Do we warn them? Do we tell the Council? Vorthak hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The Overmind's words echoed in his mind. You can only choose how you respond to it. There was no going back. The galaxy was on the brink of a war it wasn't prepared for, and the outcome hinged on his next move. We tell no one, Vorthak said finally, his voice firm. Not yet. We need to understand more. We can't risk setting off a chain reaction before we know what we're dealing with. Valric and Urok exchanged glances, both of them clearly uncomfortable with the secrecy, but they trusted Vorthak enough to follow his lead. And what about Earth? Valric asked. What do we do if the Council sends more expeditions? They'll eventually learn what we've learned. Vorthak stared out the viewport at the blue-green planet below, his heart heavy. We buy time. We keep them distracted, feed them just enough information to keep them from looking too closely, for now. But for how long? Urok pressed. This can't stay hidden forever. Vorthak didn't answer. He knew Urok was right. The galaxy's curiosity about Earth was growing, and it was only a matter of time before someone else uncovered the truth. But he couldn't let that happen, not until he was certain of what they were up against. We'll figure it out, Vorthak said quietly, more to himself than to his team. The ship's comms crackled to life, cutting through the tension. Commander Vorthak, this is Captain Arvox. We've received orders to rendezvous with the fleet. The Council wants a full report on your mission. Vorthak's jaw clenched. Of course, they would. The Council never wasted time when it came to potential threats. He needed to tread carefully. One wrong move, one word out of place, and the entire galaxy could be thrown into chaos. Understood, Captain, Vorthak replied, his voice steady. Prepare for docking. The transmission ended, leaving the cabin in silence once again. Valric stood up, adjusting the straps on his armor. So, what's the plan, Commander? How do we handle the Council? Vorthak turned to face him, his expression unreadable. We tell them what they want to hear, that Earth is dangerous, that we encountered hostile creatures, but we omit the most important parts. We keep the Overmind, the truth about humanity, to ourselves. For now. Urok raised an eyebrow. And if they push for more details? Vorthak's eyes hardened. Then we give them a distraction, something else to focus on. But whatever happens, the truth about Earth stays with us. Valric nodded, though his unease was clear. And if the humans find out what we know? Vorthak's gaze drifted back to the planet below, the swirling clouds and vast oceans hiding the countless secrets buried beneath its surface. "They will," he said softly, "and when they do, the galaxy won't be ready." The ship docked with the fleet's flagship, the hiss of the airlock signaling the end of their brief respite. Vorthak took a deep breath, steeling himself for the coming confrontation. He had navigated the treacherous waters of the Council's politics before, but this was different. This time, the stakes were far higher than any mission he had undertaken. The door slid open, revealing a squad of soldiers waiting to escort them to the briefing room. Vorthak exchanged a glance with Valric and Urok, the unspoken understanding passing between them. Whatever happened next, they were in it together. As they stepped onto the flagship's deck, the weight of the galaxy's gaze seemed to settle on Vorthak's shoulders. The Council would demand answers. But the real truth, was something they couldn't handle. Not yet. The Council's briefing chamber was vast, a hollowed-out, gleaming space where decisions of galactic importance were made. The walls were lined with banners from countless species, each one a reminder of the sheer number of worlds the Council governed. In the center, the curved seats of the High Council formed a crescent, overlooking the podium where Vorthak now stood. As he waited, he could feel their eyes on him. The Council members, all of them veteran commanders, strategists, and diplomats, had faced numerous galactic crises before. But this time, their eyes carried a weight that told them this wasn't just another expedition report. They knew Earth was different. The High Chancellor, a towering Vornite with gray skin and crystalline eyes, spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber with an air of authority. "Commander Vorthak, your mission to Earth was marked by significant deviations from your original objectives. We are eager to hear your full report." Vorthak kept his expression neutral, though his mind raced. He had to tread carefully, balancing the truth with the lies they would need to believe. "Yes, Chancellor," Vorthak began, his tone measured. "Earth is everything we expected, and more. It is, without question, a Class 13 Deathworld. The planet's environment is hostile beyond what our records could convey. Predators of unmatched ferocity roam freely, and even the atmosphere itself seems designed to challenge any species that dares live there." The Chancellor nodded, as if this was exactly what he expected to hear. "And the humans?" Vorthak paused, choosing his words carefully. "The humans have adapted. They have grown strong, both physically and mentally, because of the constant trials their world presents. Their resilience is remarkable. They are formidable warriors, capable of facing dangers that would cripple other species." A murmur ran through the Council chamber. Several members exchanged uneasy glances. "But," Vorthak added, his voice lowering, "they are also isolated. They are not yet aware of the full extent of their potential, and their knowledge of the wider galaxy is limited. While they are a threat on their homeworld, they have not yet developed the means to become a true interstellar power." The Chancellor's crystalline eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you suggesting that the humans are not an immediate danger to the Council?" Vorthak inclined his head. "At this time, they are not. They are still discovering the universe beyond their world. Their focus is inward, on survival. If we act cautiously, we may be able to monitor them and learn more without provoking them into action." The Chancellor leaned back in his seat, considering Vorthak's words. After a long pause, he spoke again. "Your mission encountered resistance, did it not? From what we gathered, there were unexpected developments on the surface." Vorthak's pulse quickened. This was where things became delicate. He had to give them enough truth to satisfy their curiosity, without revealing the full extent of what he had learned. "Yes, Chancellor," Vorthak said slowly. "We encountered several hostile species native to Earth, including some that defied known biology. There were casualties. My team barely made it out alive." "And the fortress?" Another council member, a reptilian expatriate, interjected. "Your report mentioned a structure of unknown origin." Vorthak took a steadying breath. "The fortress was ancient. Its design did not match any human architecture we've encountered. It appeared to predate their civilization, possibly built by a species long extinct. Inside, we found something. An intelligence. A kind of overmind. The murmurs grew louder. The council members were on edge now, leaning forward in their seats. The overmind claimed to have knowledge of Earth's history, Vorthak continued. It spoke of the planet's unique role in shaping its inhabitants, turning them into what they are today. But it did not share much beyond that. Its motives were unclear, and its connection to the planet is still a mystery. An intelligence? The Chancellor repeated, his voice tense. Did it pose a threat to your mission? Vorthak hesitated. The overmind had been unsettling, yes, but it had not been overtly hostile. Yet revealing too much could lead to further scrutiny of Earth, something he wanted to avoid. It was cryptic, but not directly threatening, Vorthak said. It seemed more interested in observing us than engaging in any hostile actions. The Chancellor's gaze remained fixed on him, studying every word. And what did it tell you about the humans? What should the Council expect from this species? Vorthak's mind flashed back to the Overmind's final warning, the truth about Earth. The secret that the galaxy wasn't ready for. He couldn't let that slip. Not yet. It warned that humanity's potential was still dormant, Vorthak said carefully. That they are on the verge of something transformative. But it was vague, and we couldn't determine the exact nature of this transformation. What we do know is that, for now, the humans remain grounded on Earth. Their development is still in its early stages. The Chancellor nodded slowly, though his expression remained unreadable. And your recommendation, Commander? Vorthak straightened. We should continue to monitor them, but without interference. The humans are resilient and resourceful, but they are not yet a direct threat. By observing from a distance, we can learn more about their growth and ensure that when the time comes to act, we are fully prepared. The Chancellor exchanged a look with the other council members before turning back to Vorthak. Very well, Commander. We will consider your recommendations. For now, your mission is concluded. You are dismissed. Vorthak nodded and turned to leave, Valric and Urok following closely behind. As they exited the chamber and made their way back to the docking bay, the tension in the air remained thick. We pulled it off, Urok said under his breath, relief flooding his voice. They bought it. For now, Vorthak muttered, his mind still racing. But they'll keep digging. It's only a matter of time before someone else goes to Earth and discovers the truth. Valric frowned. So what do we do? Vorthak stopped walking, turning to face his team. We prepare. Earth isn't just a danger to itself, it's a danger to the entire galaxy. If humanity awakens to its full potential, the balance of power will shift in ways we can't predict. You really think they're that dangerous? Urok asked, doubt creeping into his voice. Vorthak's eyes hardened. I don't think. I know. The Overmind warned me they don't even realize what they're capable of yet. But once they do, the galaxy will never be the same. Valric and Urok exchanged uneasy glances, but said nothing. They trusted Vorthak's judgment, even if the future seemed uncertain. As they boarded their ship, Vorthak couldn't shake the feeling that they had only delayed the inevitable. Earth's secrets were too big to stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, the truth would come out, and when it did, the galaxy would be forced to reckon with humanity's true power. The hum of the ship's engines was a constant backdrop, a soothing vibration that had become familiar over the long journey. I leaned against the cold metal wall of the bridge, staring at the view screen that displayed the ever-distant stars. Each pinprick of light reminded me of the vastness of space, and the role we played in it. A nagging thought lingered in the back of my mind: the Council's interest in Earth was only the beginning. The report I had sent back was strategically crafted, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the Council would not let this go so easily. They would want to know more, to see for themselves what lay beneath the surface of Earth's chaotic existence. I glanced at my crew, all men, and felt the weight of responsibility settle deeper into my bones. The respect I had for humanity grew with every moment I spent on their world. It wasn't just the danger that made Earth formidable. It was the people. Commander Vorthak, a voice pulled me from my thoughts. It was Vrex, my second in command, his tone laced with concern. We are nearing the Galactic Council's headquarters. Are you ready for the briefing? I straightened, adopting my usual commanding posture. As ready as I'll ever be. Ensure the data packets are secure. We can't afford any misinterpretation of our findings. Vrex nodded, a frown etching his features. Do you think they'll probe further into Earth's capabilities? Your report was cautious, but it might raise more questions than it answers. That's the point. I paced the bridge, contemplating the implications of my decisions. If I make them question what they believe they know, it might buy Earth some time. The last thing we want is for them to treat humanity as a curiosity that needs to be monitored or, worse, exterminated. The ship's autopilot hummed as we docked at the Council station, an imposing structure that floated in the void like a metallic fortress. It was a hub of intrigue, where races from all corners of the galaxy congregated to debate, discuss, and decide the fate of worlds. I steeled myself for the inevitable questions. As we disembarked, I was struck by the atmosphere of the council chamber. It buzzed with a mixture of excitement and tension. Various species populated the vast hall, each distinct in their forms and customs. A shiver ran down my spine as I recalled the complexities of galactic politics. I had to navigate this minefield carefully. Commander Vorthak. The voice cut through the murmur of the crowd, drawing my attention. It was Velnar, the High Counselor, a towering figure whose translucent skin glowed with an ethereal light. We have much to discuss regarding your recent mission to Earth. Indeed, Counselor. I stepped forward, maintaining eye contact, a sign of respect. I've gathered data that reveals both the challenges and the potential of Earth. The other counselors leaned in, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. I projected the data onto the central screen, showcasing the reports of Earth's flora and fauna, alongside my observations of humanity's adaptability. The room fell silent as they absorbed the information. Interesting, Velnar said, his tone contemplative. You suggest that Earth's threats are not merely physical but cultural. The resilience of its inhabitants is a force to be reckoned with. I nodded. Exactly. Their ability to thrive in an environment designed to kill them speaks volumes about their potential. We must not underestimate them. A counselor from the Draconian race interjected, his voice a low rumble. But how do we know that this resilience does not also breed aggression? What if their evolution leads to a threat against us? The room erupted into a flurry of discussions. I felt the tide of opinion shift, and the weight of their collective gaze pressed down on me. I needed to redirect their concerns. Consider this, I continued, raising my voice above the din. What if we harness their capabilities rather than fear them? Instead of seeing them as a threat, we can explore the possibility of alliance. There is much to learn from humanity. This statement hung in the air, and I could see the cogs turning in their minds. They were intrigued, but the skepticism remained palpable. It was a delicate balance, and I needed to tread carefully. The overmind, I added, hoping to create an even stronger hook. The ancient structure I discovered on Earth holds knowledge that could reshape our understanding of life itself. If we approach Earth with a mindset of collaboration, we might uncover secrets that would benefit the entire galaxy. The room fell silent again. I could see the flickers of realization crossing their faces. This was not just a matter of Earth. It was a matter of galactic progress. Velnar leaned back, steepling his fingers as he considered my proposal. Are you suggesting an expedition? A way to engage with humanity beyond mere observation? He asked, his tone sharper now. Yes. If we invite representatives from Earth to our council, it will foster understanding and cooperation. They must not be seen solely through the lens of danger, I replied, my voice steady. The counselors exchanged glances, weighing the implications of my suggestion. The conversation shifted again, but this time they carried an air of optimism. Perhaps I had successfully sown the seeds of curiosity where fear had once reigned. As the discussions continued, I felt a strange sense of hope stirring within me. The very notion that we could bridge the gap between two vastly different worlds was exhilarating. It was a gamble, but sometimes the biggest risks yielded the greatest rewards. The day stretched into evening, and eventually, Velnar called for a vote. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation as we awaited the decision that would determine the course of intergalactic relations for years to come. "Let it be known that we shall extend an invitation to the leaders of Earth," Velnar declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We will seek to understand their world, their culture, and what it means to coexist with such a powerful entity." A roar of approval erupted from the council. I felt a rush of triumph, knowing I had played a pivotal role in shaping this moment. "Commander Vorthak," Velnar continued, "you will lead this initiative. Prepare for the diplomatic mission and ensure that the humans understand the gravity of this opportunity." I bowed my head slightly, a mix of pride and responsibility swelling within me. "I will do my utmost to represent both our interests and theirs." As I left the chamber, the thrill of possibility coursed through my veins. But as I exited, another thought nagged at the edges of my consciousness. What if humanity rejected our overtures? What if they proved to be more dangerous than I had anticipated? I had opened a door, and now I had to hope humanity was ready to step through it. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity as I prepared for the diplomatic mission to Earth. The Council's decision reverberated through the Galactic Alliance, and I was acutely aware of the immense weight it carried. There was a palpable buzz of excitement as diplomats from various races clamored to learn more about the humans who had piqued our curiosity. In the confines of our ship, I worked tirelessly with my team, refining our approach to the upcoming meeting. We needed to be prepared for anything from Earth's rich cultural tapestry to its notorious unpredictability. My thoughts drifted back to my time on Earth, and the raw determination I had witnessed in its people. Their survival instincts were instinctual, honed by millennia of adapting to a world that sought to obliterate them. "Commander Vorthak," Vrex's voice broke through my reverie, "I've compiled the data on Earth's leaders and key factions. There's a significant diversity in their governance systems, and not all of them will view our invitation favorably." I nodded, acknowledging the complexities we faced. "What are the major factions we should focus on?" Vrex pulled up a holographic display depicting various Earth nations, each represented by a symbol of their flag. "We have the United States, European Union, China, Russia, and a few other nations. Each has its own agenda. We'll need to tailor our approach to appeal to their individual interests." "Right." I studied the holograms. "We must emphasize the potential for trade and mutual benefit. They are a race driven by innovation. We can appeal to their thirst for knowledge." Vrex smirked. "Just don't mention the word extermination during your pitch. I doubt they'll respond well to that." A wry smile creased my lips. "I assure you, that word will be absent from our discussions." As we neared Earth, my anticipation heightened. I hadn't returned to a planet since my initial visit, and memories flooded back the raw beauty of the landscapes, the sounds of bustling cities, and the fierce spirit of its people. The more I thought about it, the more I understood why they were classified as a deathworld. Earth was a living, breathing testament to survival against insurmountable odds. Finally, the moment arrived. The ship glided into Earth's atmosphere, and I felt the familiar sensation of gravity pressing down on me. The planet loomed below, a swirling mosaic of green and blue. A sense of awe washed over me. Here was a world filled with potential, and I was about to engage with its inhabitants. We descended into a designated landing zone, a sprawling facility surrounded by the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest. The air was crisp and invigorating, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. As we disembarked, a team of Earth representatives awaited us, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. A tall man stepped forward, his posture radiating authority. "I'm President Jacob Harrington. Welcome to Earth, Commander Vorthak." His voice was deep and steady, a leader's voice. "President Harrington," I replied, extending my hand in greeting. The gesture felt foreign to me, but it seemed to hold significance for him. He took my hand firmly, a sign of respect. "We appreciate your willingness to visit us," he continued. "We've had our fair share of concerns about extraterrestrial contact." "Understandable," I acknowledged. "My mission is one of peace and exploration. I seek to understand your people and their potential." As we exchanged pleasantries, I scanned the other representatives, scientists, diplomats, and military personnel, each of them studying me intently. Their expressions ranged from skepticism to guarded optimism. "Shall we?" Harrington gestured toward a sleek vehicle parked nearby, and we climbed inside. As we drove through the lush greenery, I absorbed the sights and sounds of Earth, a vibrant reminder of the resilience that had led to its classification as a Deathworld. The journey culminated at a modern conference facility, where we would discuss our potential collaboration. The space was vast, adorned with advanced technology that felt both alien and familiar. As we settled in, I prepared myself for a barrage of questions, unsure of how the conversation would unfold. "Commander Vorthak," President Harrington began, leaning forward, "we've read your report. You claim that humanity holds potential that we might explore together. What exactly do you mean by that?" I cleared my throat, gauging the room's reaction. "Earth has a rich history of innovation and adaptability. Your species has faced extinction multiple times, yet you continue to persevere and evolve. This resilience can be a foundation for our collaboration." "Interesting perspective," one of the scientists interjected, her tone skeptical. "But what do you hope to gain from us? Is this just a guise for invasion?" The question hung in the air, thick with tension. I sensed the unease among the representatives. They were wary of our intentions. "I assure you, my only goal is mutual understanding," I replied, my voice steady. "The galaxy is vast, and there are threats beyond your imagination. Working together could strengthen both our species." A murmur rippled through the group, and I could see that my words were having an effect. "But why should we trust you?" Harrington pressed. "We've seen too many examples of civilizations being manipulated by outsiders. How do we know you're different?" I leaned forward, the sincerity of my intentions pouring through me. "You don't. Trust is built through dialogue, experience, and collaboration. I can only offer my word, but I hope my actions will speak louder." The atmosphere shifted, curiosity replacing suspicion. They were intrigued, perhaps even willing to consider the possibility of partnership. "Let's explore this further," Harrington said, nodding. "What do you propose as our next steps?" I outlined a plan for knowledge exchange and mutual assistance, detailing how our two species could collaborate to advance technology and combat common threats. The discussions flowed, with ideas bouncing back and forth like a game of cosmic chess. As the meeting progressed, I could feel the barriers between us beginning to dissolve. The representatives were beginning to see humanity not as a potential threat, but as an ally. Hours passed, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, we concluded the day's discussions. There was a renewed sense of hope hanging in the air, a bridge being built between our worlds. As I prepared to return to our ship, I caught a glimpse of the vast expanse of Earth stretching out before me. My heart swelled with the knowledge that this was just the beginning. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but the potential for collaboration filled me with purpose. Yet, a shadow loomed in the back of my mind. What if the Council had other plans? What if our discoveries about humanity were to be weaponized instead of embraced? As I stared into the horizon, the vast unknown awaited us, and I couldn't help but feel that this journey was only just beginning. The next morning dawned with the scent of fresh coffee and the distant sounds of Earth waking up. I was still riding the high from the previous days, meeting with President Harrington and the other representatives. There was something about the Earthling spirit that inspired me a determination to fight against the odds, to push through adversity no matter the cost. I believed we could build a powerful alliance. As I strolled through the facility, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The Council had been too eager to send me here, and while I sensed genuine interest in collaboration from the Earth representatives, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that our initial intentions might have been misaligned. Later that day, I convened with my crew aboard the ship, where we gathered to review our findings and plan the next steps in our mission. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Vrex, Kalen, and I sat around the central table, our data screens flickering with images of Earth and its inhabitants. "Commander, we've been running simulations on various collaborative projects," Vrex began, his excitement evident. "The technological exchange could be revolutionary. The humans have the potential to unlock new avenues in energy and medicine." "Agreed," I replied, feeling a surge of optimism. Their resilience could also serve us in our own battles. But just as we were about to dive deeper into our plans, a notification pinged on my console. An emergency council communication had been initiated. The air grew thick with tension as I accepted the call. The holographic image of the council chamber materialized before us, the familiar faces of the council members staring back with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. High Chancellor Threx's voice boomed through the speakers, cutting through the lingering sense of camaraderie we had built. "Commander Vorthak," he began, his expression unreadable, "the Council has reviewed your reports and has reached a critical decision regarding Earth." A knot tightened in my stomach. "What kind of decision?" "The potential of Earth is undeniable," Threx stated, leaning closer. "However, their Class 13 Deathworld status poses a significant threat. After considerable debate, we believe it would be prudent to consider a preemptive strike." The words hung in the air like a death knell. My heart raced as I processed their intentions. "A preemptive strike? You want to invade Earth?" Vrex's gaze darted between me and the Council, the unease palpable. "We've just begun to build trust. Why would we betray them like this?" "It is our duty to protect the Galactic Alliance from potential threats," Threx replied, his tone icy. "Humanity's resilience could manifest as hostility. If we do not act now, we risk facing an enemy capable of causing great destruction." "Then let's work with them," I argued, desperation creeping into my voice. "They could be our allies. We have the chance to build a relationship based on mutual understanding." The council members exchanged glances, their expressions stern and unyielding. "Emotions cannot guide our decisions, Commander. The risks are too great. We must act swiftly to neutralize the threat." I leaned forward, my mind racing. "And what if they're not a threat? We have the opportunity to create something extraordinary here. An alliance that could change the very fabric of the galaxy." "Enough," Threx's voice thundered, silencing me. "The decision is made. You are to prepare the fleet for an immediate strike against Earth. You will not only serve as the envoy, but also lead the mission to ensure compliance." I felt my heart sink. "I won't do it. I refuse to betray them." The silence in the room was deafening, and I knew I was crossing a line. Threx's gaze turned cold. "You will follow orders, Commander. Failure to comply will result in consequences that even you cannot evade." The holographic image flickered, and suddenly I felt very small. My mind was a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. The Council had ordered an invasion of a planet filled with incredible potential and extraordinary people, all because of fear. Fear that could extinguish the very spark that made humanity unique. As the meeting ended, I found myself at a crossroads. I could either comply with the Council's orders and become a part of their grim plans, or I could find a way to warn the humans and help them prepare for the imminent invasion. Turning to my crew, I could see the concern etched on their faces. "What do we do now?" Kalen asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to devise a plan to communicate with President Harrington and the others," I replied, urgency fueling my words. "They must know the truth before it's too late." Vrex nodded, determination flooding his expression. "I'll work on securing a channel. If we can get a message through, perhaps we can organize a defense strategy." With a sense of purpose, we set to work. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung over us, but I also felt a renewed sense of hope. Humanity had faced adversity before, and they had always come out stronger on the other side. We had to ensure that they would have a chance to fight back against an invasion that could shatter their world. As the ship's systems hummed to life, I felt the weight of my choice settle on my shoulders. I was risking everything: my career, my position within the council, even my life. But I couldn't stand by and watch as an innocent race was thrust into chaos. Hours later, as we prepared to transmit our warning, I couldn't help but feel the gravity of the moment. The lives of millions rested on the fragile thread of communication we were about to initiate. "Commander," Rex called, breaking me from my thoughts. "The channel is ready. We're prepared to send the message." Taking a deep breath, I nodded. "Let's do it. For Earth." As the message was sent, I felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. Would they believe us? Would they be prepared to act? The weight of uncertainty hung in the air, but I knew that the path ahead was one I had to take. Now, we had to hope that our efforts would not only be heard, but also lead to the collaboration we had dreamed of, one that could stand against the dark tide of invasion that threatened to engulf Earth. The silence that followed the transmission felt like an eternity. My heart raced as I watched the console, hoping for a response. The tension in the room was palpable, each member of the crew focused on their tasks, their eyes darting back to me for reassurance. "I'm monitoring all channels," Rex reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "We should receive a response from President Harrington shortly." "Let's hope they understand the gravity of this situation," I replied, trying to mask my anxiety. "We need them to prepare for what's coming." Just then, the console chimed, and the screen flickered to life, revealing the face of President Harrington. His expression was grave, a mix of determination and concern etched across his features. "Commander Vorthak," he greeted, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "We received your message. This is unprecedented." I could see the wheels turning in his mind, the weight of leadership pressing down on him. "You're saying the Council plans to invade Earth?" "Precisely," I confirmed, my pulse quickening. "They believe your species poses a threat to the Galactic Alliance due to your Class 13 status. But I'm here to tell you that your resilience and ingenuity are what we need to survive. We must work together." Harrington nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "What are their motives? Why now?" "Fear," I replied, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "Fear of the unknown, fear of what humanity might become if left unchecked. The Council's history is riddled with conflict, and they prefer to strike first rather than take the time to understand. Then we need to show them what humanity is capable of," he said, fire igniting in his eyes. "We will prepare for an invasion, but we will also show them we're not a race to be underestimated." "Agreed," I replied, adrenaline coursing through me. "But we need to move quickly. I don't have much time before the Council expects a report on our situation." "Understood," Harrington said, his tone resolute. "We'll mobilize our defenses and gather our most skilled strategists. We'll make sure every city is prepared to face whatever comes our way." As the call ended, I felt a swell of hope. Humanity was rising to the challenge, ready to confront a threat that could change the course of their history. But in the back of my mind, I worried, would their preparations be enough? "Commander," Rex interrupted my thoughts, "we have a problem." "What is it?" "The Council is initiating the mobilization of the fleet as we speak. They're sending their ships to Earth." The realization hit me like a physical blow. "They're acting faster than I anticipated. We need to stall them." "How?" Kellen asked, his brow furrowed in concern. "If we delay them, they'll see it as an act of defiance." I paced the deck, piecing together a plan. "We could manipulate the data from our navigation systems, make it seem like the fleet is experiencing issues. If we can buy some time, maybe Harrington and his team can fortify their defenses." Rex nodded, his fingers already flying over the console. "I can create a false report indicating navigational malfunctions. It will delay the fleet for several hours, maybe more." "Do it," I ordered, urgency pulsing through me. Every moment counts. As Rex worked, I felt the weight of our mission pressing down on me. This was no longer just about survival. It was about forging a future where humanity and the rest of the galaxy could coexist without fear. Hours ticked by, the tension in the air thick enough to slice. Finally, Vrex turned to me, a grim expression on his face. "The false report is ready. I've uploaded it to the Council's system. They should receive it any moment now." "Good work, Vrex," I replied, trying to mask my apprehension. "Now we just need to hope it buys us enough time." Just then, a communication alert pinged through the ship. The screen flickered to life again, revealing the stern visage of High Chancellor Threx. His eyes narrowed as he addressed me, a mix of anger and suspicion in his tone. "Commander Vorthak, we've received alarming reports from the fleet. They're encountering navigational issues. What's going on?" I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "High Chancellor, we're experiencing technical difficulties on board. The systems are malfunctioning due to a minor power surge. We are working to resolve it." Threx's gaze hardened. "This is unacceptable. The Council entrusted you with a critical mission, and your failure to maintain control puts our entire operation at risk." "We are doing everything we can, Chancellor," I replied, trying to sound confident despite the rising fear in my chest. "We will rectify the situation shortly. Ensure it." "Failure to comply will have severe repercussions," Threx warned before abruptly cutting the transmission. I turned to my crew, their expressions a mix of determination and dread. "We've bought ourselves some time, but we need to make it count. Harrington will have to act quickly to fortify Earth's defenses." "I'll reach out to him immediately," Kalen offered, already tapping on his console. "He needs to know we're stalling the fleet." As Kalen initiated the communication, I felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on my shoulders. We were caught in a web of political intrigue, and the stakes had never been higher. Minutes later, Kalen's expression brightened. "I'm connected. President Harrington is on the line." "Put him through," I instructed, my heart racing with anticipation. The screen lit up, revealing Harrington once again, but this time he looked more prepared, the focus of a leader determined to protect his people. "Commander," he greeted, his voice steady. "I received your message about the fleet. What can we do to prepare?" I felt a rush of urgency. "The Council is sending their fleet as we speak. You need to fortify your defenses and prepare your citizens. They will attack without warning." "Understood. We'll rally our forces and mobilize every capable unit," he replied, a fire igniting in his eyes. "But we need to know what we're facing. Do you have any intel on their strategies?" "I'm working on that," I promised, my mind racing. "But I can tell you they'll likely employ a combination of aerial bombardments and ground assaults. They may underestimate your defenses, but we can't afford to let them gain the upper hand." "Then we need to act fast," Harrington said, his voice resolute. "I'll gather our top commanders and get our defenses ready. We'll show them that Earth won't be an easy target." As the communication ended, a wave of determination washed over me. Humanity was rising to the challenge, and we were in this fight together. The Council may have believed they could extinguish the flame of humanity, but we would show them the true strength that lay within. "All right, team," I announced, a newfound sense of purpose igniting within me. "We've bought Earth some time, but we need to stay one step ahead. Let's make sure we have a plan to counter the Council's strike." As we began to strategize, a part of me wondered how this would all unfold. Would we succeed in defending Earth? Would we forge the alliance we desperately sought? The path ahead was fraught with danger, but I was determined to see it through. The fate of two worlds rested in our hands, and I would do everything in my power to ensure that humanity's potential was realized not just for their survival, but for the sake of a brighter future for all. The atmosphere aboard the Aegis was charged with a potent mix of anxiety and determination as we prepared for the invasion. The Council had mobilized their fleet, and reports indicated they were en route to Earth, their ships cutting through the fabric of space like knives through flesh. The moment we received the intelligence, I called an emergency meeting of my senior staff. Vrex, Kalen, and a few other trusted officers gathered in the war room. their faces light by the blue glow of the holographic displays surrounding us. The urgency in the air was almost palpable. "All right, team, we need to devise a strategy to counter the Council's impending attack," I began, my voice steady despite the weight on my shoulders. "They believe Earth is a Class 13 Deathworld, but we need to prove them wrong. We need to show them that humanity is a force to be reckoned with." Kalen leaned forward, a holographic map of the solar system appearing before us. "The Council's fleet consists of over 50 warships, heavily armed with plasma cannons and missile systems. They'll likely deploy a mix of orbital bombardments followed by a ground invasion." "Which cities are at the highest risk?" I asked, scanning the map, my heart sinking at the thought of millions of innocent lives at stake. "Major urban centers," Rex replied, adjusting the display to highlight the most vulnerable targets. "Washington, D.C., New York City, and Los Angeles are at the top of the list. If they strike those cities first, they'll break the spirit of the resistance." "We need to warn them," I said, determination flaring within me. "Harrington and his commanders need to fortify those locations immediately. We can't let the Council gain a foothold." Callan nodded, already reaching for the communication console. "I'll get in touch with Harrington. He needs to know how serious this is." As Callan relayed the information to Earth, I couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. Time was not on our side. The Council's fleet was approaching, and with each passing moment, the threat loomed larger. Moments later, Kalen's expression shifted to one of concern. "Commander, I'm receiving a transmission from Harrington. He's requesting to speak with you directly." "Put him through," I ordered, my heart racing. The screen flickered, and President Harrington appeared once again, his expression fierce and resolute. "Commander Vorthak, we're preparing our defenses as best we can, but I need more information. What can we expect from their tactics?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of leadership resting on my shoulders. "You must prepare for 2 waves, an initial bombardment to soften your defenses, followed by a ground assault aimed at key infrastructure points. If you can hold the line for even a short period, it will give us time to organize a counterattack." Harrington's jaw clenched, determination gleaming in his eyes. "We'll prepare for the worst. Our military is mobilizing, and civilians are being evacuated from the most vulnerable areas. We'll hold the line." "Good," I replied, my heart swelling with pride. "You have the potential to turn this battle into a testament of human resilience. Your ingenuity may surprise them." As our conversation concluded, a message from Vrex interrupted my thoughts. "Commander, the Council's fleet is entering the solar system. They're on an intercept course for Earth." "Time's up," I muttered, my stomach twisting in knots. "Let's prepare for combat." With a series of quick commands, I initiated the launch sequence for our fighter squadrons. As the screens filled with data and visuals of our ships, the tension in the room reached a boiling point. I could feel the determination of my crew, a shared resolve echoing through the ship. "Commander, we'll need to establish a strategic point in orbit to coordinate our efforts," Kellen suggested, a glimmer of hope sparking in his eyes. "If we can intercept their initial wave, we may be able to turn the tide." "Agreed," I said, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "We'll position ourselves above the eastern seaboard and prepare to engage. Our goal is to distract them long enough for Harrington's forces to fortify the cities." With our strategy in place, I took a moment to gather my thoughts. The lives of countless individuals hung in the balance, and I had to ensure that every decision I made was precise and calculated. "Listen up," I announced to my crew, my voice steady. "This is our moment. We are the vanguard of change, and we will show the Council what humanity is capable of. Together, we will prove that they've underestimated both us and our allies on Earth." With a roar of affirmation, my crew acknowledged my words. As we moved into position, the tension thickened, and I could feel the anticipation building. We were mere moments away from the confrontation that could change the course of our shared destinies. "Commander," Vrex interrupted, his voice tense. "The Council's fleet has initiated a communication with us. They demand to know our intentions regarding the impending conflict. Let's respond, I replied, steeling myself for the confrontation. I want them to understand that we will not back down. They will have to face the full force of our determination. As the screen flickered to life, High Chancellor Threx's stern visage filled the display. His eyes narrowed as he regarded me with a mix of disdain and frustration. Commander Vorthak, you are in violation of Council orders. Stand down and allow our fleet to proceed with their mission. I cannot do that, Chancellor, I replied, my voice unwavering. Earth is under our protection, and we will not allow the Council to invade. Your defiance is noted, but it will lead to your demise, Threx warned, a thin smile playing on his lips. You are outnumbered and outmatched. We will see about that, I retorted, my heart racing as I prepared for the imminent conflict. As the communication ended, the tension in the war room reached a fever pitch. All ships, prepare for engagement, I ordered, my voice booming through the intercom. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. With a chorus of confirmations echoing through the ship, we positioned ourselves for battle. The moment the enemy fleet came into view, I could see the formidable ships bristling with weapons, their hulls gleaming ominously against the black void of space. Fighters, launch, I commanded, adrenaline surging as our fleet of sleek ships shot out from the Aegis, engines roaring to life. As the fighters scattered into formation, I felt a thrill of anticipation. This was it. We were not just defending a planet, we were fighting for our existence, for the very essence of what it meant to be human. Engage the enemy, I shouted, and the screen erupted with the fiery chaos of war as laser fire lit up the void. The first wave of enemy ships retaliated almost immediately, their plasma cannons unleashing a barrage of fire. We wove through the chaos, dodging incoming blasts and returning fire with precision. Commander, they're focusing their fire on our right flank, Rex shouted, his fingers flying over the console as he monitored the battle. We need to redirect our firepower. Divert the fighters to engage their lead ships, I commanded, my heart racing as the battle unfolded before us. We need to take down their command structure. As our forces maneuvered, I watched the fierce determination of my pilots. Humanity was rising to the occasion, pushing back against the tide of despair that threatened to engulf us. In the distance, I spotted Harrington's forces beginning to engage with the Council's ground troops. Explosions rocked the landscape, sending plumes of smoke billowing into the sky. Status report from Earth, I shouted, gripping the console as I monitored the conflict. Callan responded, his voice steady despite the chaos. Harrington's forces are holding their ground. They've established a defensive perimeter around key locations, but the Council's troops are relentless. Keep them updated on our progress, I ordered, my heart heavy with the weight of their struggle. They need to know we're fighting for them. As the battle raged on, I felt the tide beginning to shift. Our forces were starting to penetrate the enemy lines, and the Council's fleet was taking heavier losses than anticipated. Commander, we've breached their formation, Rex shouted, excitement coursing through his voice. We're targeting their flagship now. Focus all fire on that ship, I commanded, adrenaline pumping through my veins. If we take it down, we may break their morale. With renewed vigor, our fighters unleashed a relentless barrage against the flagship, our combined firepower overwhelming its defenses. I held my breath, hoping against hope that this would turn the tide in our favor. Direct hit, Rex shouted, and I felt a surge of hope as explosions erupted from the flagship's hull. They're losing power. Press the attack. We can't let up now, I urged, my voice ringing with conviction. As we continued to pour fire into the enemy ship, I could see its hull buckling, the Council's insignia flickering as its systems began to fail. And then, in a blinding flash, the flagship erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, debris scattering through the void. Cheers erupted from my crew, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But as the dust settled, I realized we were far from finished. The remaining Council ships began to regroup, their resolve hardening as they witnessed the destruction of their command vessel. "Prepare for a counteroffensive," I shouted, determination surging within me. "They won't back down easily." As the enemy forces rallied, I felt a sense of dread creeping back in. This battle was far from over, and if we didn't stay sharp, we risked losing everything we had fought for. "Commander," Callan said, his voice urgent, "we need to initiate the next phase of our plan. The longer we delay, the more time they have to regroup." "Agreed," I said, steeling myself for the next step. "Let's deploy our remaining squadrons for a ground assault. If we can cripple their forces on Earth, we may gain the advantage we need." With a series of quick commands, I activated the launch sequence for our ground troops. As our shuttles descended toward the surface, I felt a mixture of hope and dread. This was it, the moment that would determine the fate of our worlds. As the shuttles touched down, I watched as our forces disembarked, ready to engage the Council's troops on the ground. The roar of battle echoed around me, and I felt a fierce pride swell within me. "Stay sharp and protect our civilians," I shouted over the comms as we moved to reinforce Harrington's troops. "We fight for our future." In the distance, I could see the chaos unfolding, the clash of weapons and cries of combat echoing through the air. The battlefield was a harrowing sight, but it was also a testament to humanity's resilience. As we pressed forward, I knew we were fighting not just for survival, but for the very essence of what it meant to be human. The tide was turning, and we would not back down. With renewed determination, we charged into the fray, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Council would learn the truth behind Earth's Class 13 status, and we would emerge victorious. The war had just begun. The battlefield was a swirling maelstrom of chaos as the Council's forces unleashed their full might upon the Earth. Laser fire lit up the sky like a storm, light the faces of soldiers who stood resolute, bracing for the onslaught. I felt the tremors of war beneath my feet as the ground shook with the force of explosions, and the air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burnt metal. "Commander, the enemy is advancing," Callan shouted, urgency lacing his voice. "They've breached our outer defenses and are pushing toward the city center." "Fall back to the secondary line," I ordered, my heart pounding. "We need to regroup and give Harrington's forces time to fortify their positions." As we retreated, I could see the fierce determination in the eyes of my soldiers. They weren't just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for their planet, for everything they held dear. The spirit of humanity shone brightly, even in the face of overwhelming odds. "Contact Harrington," I shouted as we moved back, the sound of explosions ringing in my ears. "He needs to know the enemy is closing in." Callan relayed the message, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Harrington, we're falling back to the secondary line. You need to reinforce your position immediately." "Copy that, Commander," Harrington replied, his voice firm. "We're holding our ground, but the Council's troops are relentless. We need your support." "Hold on, we're on our way," I urged, adrenaline coursing through me as we maneuvered through the wreckage of the battlefield. As we fell back, I could see the enemy troops advancing, plasma rifles blazing, armor gleaming ominously under the smoke-filled sky. They were relentless, driven by a ruthless determination to subjugate Earth and prove their superiority. "Prepare defensive positions," I commanded, rallying my soldiers as we reached the secondary line. "We need to hold them here." We quickly set up barricades and positioned our forces, ready to engage the enemy once more. The tension was palpable as we prepared for the imminent clash, the weight of responsibility heavy on my shoulders. I could feel the lives of countless civilians resting on our success. Just as I thought we had gained a moment's reprieve, a deafening roar erupted overhead. I looked up to see Council aerial units sweeping in from above, their sleek ships darting through the smoky skies like predators hunting their prey. "Get the anti-air batteries operational," I shouted, my heart racing as I scanned the horizon. "We can't let them bomb the city." "Working on it," Callan replied, already coordinating with our gunners. The thundering sound of anti-air fire filled the air as our troops returned fire, tracer rounds lighting up the sky. The first wave of Council ships unleashed a barrage of plasma missiles, raining destruction upon our lines. I watched in horror as the blast tore through our defenses, sending soldiers flying and shattering our makeshift barricades. "Reinforce the right flank," I commanded, adrenaline surging as I saw our troops struggling to hold the line. "We can't let them breach our perimeter." As I moved through the chaos, I spotted a group of soldiers pinned down behind a shattered wall, their eyes wide with fear. "Get to cover," I yelled, rushing over to them. "We need to fall back and regroup." As we moved together, I could feel the heat of battle intensifying around us. Explosions erupted like thunder, and the cries of wounded soldiers echoed in my ears. "Commander," Rex called out, his voice urgent, "we need to push back now. If we wait any longer, they'll overwhelm us." "Agreed," I shouted, my resolve hardening. "Let's take the fight to them, for Earth." With a rallying cry, we surged forward, pushing through the chaos. Our soldiers followed, fueled by the fierce determination to protect their home. I could feel the tide shifting as we engaged the enemy head-on. As we fought, I caught sight of Harrington and his troops, holding their ground against the relentless Council forces. The sight filled me with hope, and I knew we had to rally together if we were to withstand this onslaught. "Cover me," I shouted to my soldiers as I made my way toward Harrington. "We need to coordinate our efforts." With laser fire crackling around me, I sprinted across the battlefield, dodging enemy fire and explosions. I reached Harrington's position, panting as I surveyed the scene. "Harrington," I called, my voice rising above the chaos. "We need to combine our forces and hit them from both sides. We can't let them gain any ground." Harrington nodded, his expression grim but determined. "Let's do it. We'll flank them and push them back." As we regrouped, I felt a surge of hope. This was our moment. We were not just fighting for survival, we were fighting for our very existence. On my signal, I shouted to our combined forces. "We'll move in 3, 2, 1, now." With a roar, we charged forward, launching ourselves into the fray. The sound of weapons fire, explosions, and the cries of battle filled the air as we surged into the heart of the enemy forces. The clash was intense, but we fought with a ferocity born of desperation and determination. I could see the Council troops faltering, their confidence shaken as we pressed the attack. "Push forward," I shouted, adrenaline pumping through my veins. "For Earth." The battle raged on, but I could feel the tide beginning to turn. Our combined forces were overwhelming the enemy, driving them back from our position. Just as victory seemed within our grasp, a new wave of enemy troops surged forth, their armor gleaming as they charged into the fray. The Council had deployed reinforcements, and the battlefield erupted in renewed chaos. "Fall back! Fall back!" I shouted, realizing the urgency of the situation. "We need to regroup and fortify." As we retreated, I glanced back at the battlefield, the chaos swirling around me. The Council had unleashed their full might, and we were on the brink of being overwhelmed. But deep down, I knew we were not done yet. We would fight until our last breath, until every last ounce of strength was spent. Humanity had faced insurmountable odds before, and we would rise to the challenge once more. As I fell back with my troops, I resolved to continue the fight. The Council would learn that Earth was more than just a Class 13 Deathworld. We were a force to be reckoned with, and we would not be easily defeated. "Prepare for a counteroffensive," I commanded, my heart racing as I formulated a new plan. "We will not let them take our home." With determination fueling my resolve, I rallied my troops, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The battle for Earth was far from over, and we would rise to meet it. The battlefield was a cacophony of chaos as I charged forward, my pulse racing in rhythm with the staccato of gunfire and the rumble of explosions. The acrid stench of burning debris filled the air, mingling with the desperate cries of my comrades and the metallic clang of armor against armor. I gripped my plasma rifle tightly, sweat dripping down my brow, feeling every ounce of weight as I dove behind a crumbling wall. "Keep moving," I shouted to my men, ducking as a searing blue bolt of energy whizzed past, narrowly missing my head. "We can't let them gain ground." Callan was beside me, eyes narrowed as he scanned the advancing Council forces. "They're coming in waves," he said, his voice tense. "We need to hit their flanks or we'll be overrun." "Agreed," I replied, adrenaline coursing through me like wildfire. "On my mark, we'll push forward and catch them off guard. 1, 2, 3. We leapt from our cover, firing in unison, the sharp crack of our rifles mingling with the alien screams of the Council troops as we rained death upon them. I could see the fear in their eyes, the realization that we weren't just some primitive race to be easily conquered. We were fighting for our home, and it showed. The Council soldiers faltered for just a moment, their formation breaking as we surged forward. I caught a glimpse of Harrington to my left, his own squad engaged in fierce combat, pushing the enemy back with fierce determination. "Cover him," I yelled, pointing to Harrington as he aimed for a particularly armored soldier. Callan and I unleashed a barrage of fire, cutting down the aliens who dared to flank him. Harrington fired, and the Council soldier crumpled to the ground, armor sparking. "Nice shot," I called, and Harrington gave a tight smile, his eyes glinting with the thrill of battle. But as I turned back to the fray, a massive figure emerged from the smoke, a hulking Council commander, adorned in glistening armor, with a plasma cannon mounted on his shoulder. He surveyed the battlefield with cold, calculating eyes, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "Fall back," I shouted, knowing we needed to regroup before he unleashed his firepower. The troops scrambled, dodging blasts as they sought cover. A blast from the commander's cannon ripped through our lines, sending soldiers flying. I ducked behind a nearby debris mound, my heart pounding as I felt the shockwave reverberate through the ground. "Commander, we need to take him out," Callan shouted, leaning against the wall beside me, his face set in grim determination. "He'll tear us apart if we don't." "I'll distract him," I replied, formulating a plan even as I felt the heat of battle pressing in on all sides. "You flank him from the left. When I give the signal, we take him down together." "Understood," Callan nodded, his resolve unyielding. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. It was time to act. "Now," I shouted, sprinting toward the center of the battlefield, drawing the commander's attention. "Over here, you ugly bastard," I yelled, firing my plasma rifle at him. The bolt struck the commander's armor, causing him to turn, a snarl of anger crossing his features. His cannon swung toward me, and I dove behind a nearby boulder just as it discharged, the blast tearing through the air where I had just been. I could hear Callan moving, taking advantage of the distraction as he circled to the left. "Your time is up, human," the commander roared, his voice deep and menacing, echoing through the chaos. "Not today," I yelled back, peering out from behind cover. I could see Callan now, moving stealthily, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. "Now, Callan," I shouted, and without hesitation, he unleashed a volley of plasma fire, striking the commander's exposed flank. The alien staggered, armor sparking as it absorbed the hits. "Go for the weak points," I yelled, my heart racing. "Aim for the joints." As the commander reeled, I rushed in, adrenaline propelling me forward. I ducked low, avoiding a swipe of his massive arm, and rolled behind him, my rifle trained on his back. In a swift motion, I fired at the joint of his armor, the plasma bolt striking true. The commander roared in pain, stumbling as Callan's shots landed again, and I could see the armor cracking, pieces falling away. "Finish him," Callan shouted, his voice fierce. With a final surge of strength, I charged forward, my rifle aimed directly at the commander's exposed neck. I squeezed the trigger, the bolt flying true and striking with a brilliant flash. The commander fell, crashing to the ground, his massive form stirring up clouds of dust. I felt a surge of triumph wash over me as the remaining Council soldiers hesitated, confusion and fear etched on their faces. Push forward, I yelled, rallying my troops. Now's our chance. The tide was turning. The council's forces, witnessing their leader fall, began to retreat, their once mighty front wavering. My soldiers surged forward, driven by the scent of victory, pushing back against the invaders. Stay focused, I shouted, urging my troops to maintain their formation. We need to exploit their weakness. The battlefield transformed into a symphony of chaos, a dance of destruction as we clashed with the council soldiers, the air thick with energy and resolve. Explosions rocked the ground, sending shockwaves through the air, and I felt the exhilarating rush of battle coursing through my veins. But amid the chaos, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The council had sent their best, but we had proven our resilience. Yet, I couldn't ignore the nagging doubt that their next wave would be even more ferocious. "Commander," Kalen's voice cut through the noise, drawing my attention. "We have incoming air support. They're deploying heavy artillery." I looked up to see council ships descending from the smoke-filled sky, their sleek forms looming ominously against the backdrop of war. "Take cover," I shouted, the urgency of the moment settling over us like a heavy blanket. The ground shook violently as the council ships unleashed their payload, missiles raining down upon our lines. The detonations were thunderous, sending debris flying and soldiers scrambling for safety. "Hold your positions," I yelled, rallying my troops as I took cover behind a crumbled building. "We need to regroup." As the explosion subsided, I took a moment to assess our situation. The council had taken a heavy toll, but they weren't done yet. The war was escalating, and I knew we needed a new strategy to face the onslaught ahead. "We can't hold them off forever," Kalen said, breathless as he wiped sweat from his brow. "We need to cut off their air support." I nodded, determination flaring in my chest. "We'll need to coordinate with Harrington. If we can establish a foothold in their supply lines, we might just turn the tide." As we gathered our remaining troops, I felt the weight of the battle pressing down on me. But in that moment, I knew we were stronger together. We would find a way to outsmart the council, to show them that humanity was not to be trifled with. "Prepare to move," I ordered, my voice steady despite the chaos. "We'll strike their supply lines and take out their air support. For Earth." With renewed vigor, we charged forward, ready to face whatever challenges awaited us. The fight for our planet was far from over, but I could feel the fire of determination igniting in my heart. We would fight, we would survive, and we would show the Council the true strength of humanity. The air crackled with tension as we prepared for our final push against the Council forces. The battlefield, once a chaotic whirlwind of gunfire and explosions, had quieted into a tense standoff. We had regrouped and rallied the remaining troops, a ragtag army forged in the crucible of war, ready to face the alien invaders one last time. "We've fought hard to get here," I said, my voice firm as I addressed my men, their faces smeared with dirt and determination. "We've lost comrades, but their sacrifices have brought us to this moment. We take back our planet today, not just for ourselves, but for every human who has ever lived under the threat of oppression. Let's show the Council the strength of a united Earth." A roar of approval echoed around me, a surge of energy igniting the crowd. "For Earth," they shouted in unison, the battle cry resonating deep within my chest. As the Council's forces assembled for what would surely be their final stand, I could see their fear mirrored in the faces of my comrades. This was it. We would either reclaim our home or lose everything we fought for. I took my position at the front line, my heart pounding in my chest. The Council commander, a towering figure draped in the remnants of their once imposing armor, glared at us from the other side of the battlefield. His forces stood behind him, an imposing wall of alien soldiers ready to defend their claim. "Ready," Kalen whispered beside me, clutching his rifle tightly. I nodded, steeling myself for the onslaught to come. "Now," I yelled, and we charged forward, our boots pounding against the ground as we surged into battle. The air filled with the deafening roar of weapons fire, and plasma bolts lit up the sky like shooting stars. As we clashed with the Council troops, the chaos erupted anew. I ducked and rolled, returning fire as I made my way toward the enemy lines. Kalen moved beside me, covering my flanks as we pressed deeper into their ranks. "Push through," I shouted, my voice rising above the din of combat. "We need to reach their command center." Our forces fought valiantly, cutting through the council soldiers like a knife through butter. The fear and desperation that had plagued us in the beginning had transformed into fierce determination. We were no longer the underdogs. We were a formidable force ready to reclaim our destiny. As we fought, I could see the alien command center looming ahead, a massive structure pulsating with energy. If we could take it down, we could cripple their coordination and win this war. "Cover me," I yelled to Kalen as I made a break for the command center, dodging blasts and returning fire with precision. My heart raced as I sprinted through the chaos, the world around me blurring in a haze of color and sound. Just as I reached the entrance, an explosion erupted nearby, sending me sprawling to the ground. I shook my head, clearing the stars from my vision, and scrambled to my feet, adrenaline surging through me. "Commander," Kalen's voice rang out, and I turned to see him fighting off a group of council soldiers. Without thinking, I charged back to help him, my rifle blazing. "Stay down," I yelled, taking aim and firing at the aliens closing in on him. One by one, they fell, and I felt a rush of triumph. Together, we fought as one, seamlessly coordinating our movements and covering each other. With the immediate threat neutralized, I gestured toward the command center. "We need to finish this." We rushed forward, the entrance now in sight. As we burst through the doors, I felt a surge of hope. The inside was bathed in eerie blue light, and I could see the control panels flickering with data. This was where we could bring their operations to a grinding halt. Over there, I pointed to a console at the far end of the room, where a group of technicians worked frantically to maintain control of their forces. "We take that down." Kalen and I sprinted toward the console, guns blazing. The technicians turned, panic etched across their faces, but it was too late. We stormed in, overpowering them with swift movements and precision fire. "Plant the charges," I shouted to Kalen as I moved to cover our exit. He quickly retrieved explosive charges from his pack, attaching them to the console. "Charges set," he yelled, and I nodded, glancing at the countdown timer. We had mere seconds before the console would explode, crippling their communication network. "Let's go," I shouted, and we raced back through the command center, dodging stray fire as we exited into the battlefield. The moment we stepped outside, the ground shook beneath our feet as the command center erupted in a brilliant explosion. A shockwave rippled through the air, and I could see the council soldiers falter, confusion sweeping across their ranks. "Now's our chance," I shouted, rallying our troops as we pushed forward, sensing the tide had turned. "Let's finish this." The sight of their command center in ruins seemed to shatter the council's morale. Soldiers who had once fought with brutal efficiency now stumbled backward, casting fearful glances at their fallen leaders. With a roar, our forces surged, pushing back against the now disheartened invaders. As we advanced, I caught sight of the towering council commander, now isolated and desperate. He bellowed orders, but his soldiers were faltering, struggling to regroup. "Push him," I commanded, pointing toward the alien leader. "Take him down." We charged, rifles raised, and I felt a surge of adrenaline as we closed in on the commander. He fought valiantly, but it was clear that the will of the council was crumbling. In a final, desperate attempt, he swung his plasma cannon, but it was too late. Kalen and I, united in purpose, unleashed a barrage of fire that struck true. The commander staggered, his armor bursting apart, before he finally fell to the ground with a deafening thud. A collective cheer erupted from our forces, a wave of exhilaration washing over us. "Victory!" we roared, our voices mingling with the sounds of celebration as we witnessed the council forces retreating in disarray. I stood amidst the chaos, breathless but triumphant. We had done it. We had faced the council and won against all odds. Earth was ours, and in that moment, I knew our strength would be remembered throughout the galaxy. As the last remnants of the council forces fled, I looked at Kalan, a grin spreading across my face. "We did it, brother." He clapped me on the shoulder, his eyes shining with pride. "For Earth." We turned toward our remaining troops, the realization of our hard-fought victory settling in. Together, we would rebuild, we would heal, and we would ensure that humanity would never again be seen as a lesser species. As I gazed at the sky, now clear of smoke and destruction, I felt hope blossoming in my heart. We were humanity, a Class 13 Deathworld species, and we had proven that we would not be conquered. And as we began to gather our forces, preparing to reclaim our world, I knew that our story was just beginning.